Hey everyone, this is Ian, the part-time Dungeon Master. I'm just checking out the stream, seeing how well it sounds through YouTube. Alright, so far it's looking good. I hope you guys don't mind not being able to see me for this, as I can't really broadcast video. I can only broadcast audio, because that takes the least amount of bandwidth, and my upload speed is not that great, so it's pretty much as good as it gets. So, as we're getting started here, I guess I should go ahead and formally introduce myself. My name is Ian, the part-time Dungeon Master. Welcome to the Dungeon Master's Corner. I will be going through today's video or Twitch broadcast, depending on whichever you're watching, because if this at any point sounds kind of crappy or kind of ruddy, you can just catch the replay of it on my YouTube channel with a link down below, and I'll be broadcasting there or putting it up there as well as some other things. So yeah, as I said, how do you stop your villain, your big bad evil guy, from being turned into a puddle of steaming poop, essentially, or a mush of all of his organs and bones from the barbarian, the ranger, the fighter, and all that jazz, in a matter of 3 to 5 turns? How do you make him last longer and seem so much more intimidating? Well, you cheat a little bit, for one. You see, you are the Dungeon Master. You are the narrator of the story. You don't want your villain to be going down in just a couple of turns because the players rolled well enough. No, you want your villain to strike such fear into your players that they are terrorized of the idea of him coming back again. So, you cheat. I don't mean like flat out cheat and ignore rules and so on. No, I mean, subtly cheat. Maybe he's been studying the players as a smart villain would. He's been studying the players, so he kind of knows what spells they open up with, so he's already got countermeasures prepared. The wizard likes to open up with a fireball, and then the players rush in. Well, so he has, a cloak of fire resistance on, or maybe something else that just, helps negate the fire damage, so that way he doesn't have to worry about that. Or maybe the paladin and the fighter have some sort of tag team thing that they do where one goes and then the other one goes, and they both play off each other in order to deal as much physical damage as possible to an enemy. How do you deal with that? Well, get some damage resistance on that guy, keep him out of their reach for another, and you've got that problem solved. But not every villain is some magical caster. Some villains are just really good fighters, so that's fine. If they're just more of a tank and spanky kind of villain, if they're more sword and board and fighting with the weapons that they have versus their magic, they can still have magical equipment that helps not fully negate but lessen the power of the players. You don't want to fully take away your players' powers because that's just unfair. And once they catch on that they've their best laid plans aren't working anymore, or aren't working at all, then they're going to start thinking, okay, something's up. And you don't want them to think that you're cheating them, but rather that something is causing for their best laid plans not to work. There was one encounter I had designed, and it worked pretty well for the campaign, considering the campaign had 3 magic casters in it. There was a magus, there was a wizard, and then there was a sorcerer. So the villain, essentially, got his own personal wizard to fully inscribe the inside of this room with magic countering spell runes. So wherever a spell is cast inside the rune, a rune glows and snuffs the spell out. And it costed a hefty penny to get it made, but he did it. And the players felt like, crap, we can't rely on our magic all the time, so now we have to do things that the spells can't, or the runes can't counter. So they figured out that essentially the counterspell runes only work on offensive magic. So they instead used buffing magic. They, used enlarge. They use giant strength and a couple other things that essentially they used other means of powering up their side and weakening the villain in order to fight him, because the counterspell runes only affected offensive magic. And I felt like this was a great idea, and my players thought it was a great idea as well. Some of them were like a little miffed at first. It's like, oh, well, it kind of sucks, we go against this big bad evil guy, and here we are, drop down to support instead of, steamrolling through him with mortar fire like we normally do. It's like, well, yeah, but, at the same time, you had to change your strategy and work as a team in order to succeed, versus you just kicking the door down and filling it with fire and hoping it kills whatever. And then when it comes to essentially other things that you can do, I think when it comes down to it, is that the best way in order to ensure that your villain survives an encounter with the players and your villain actually is able to get through everything is to give him gimmicks. Perhaps he's got a special ability that lets him parry certain attacks or take damage resistance against certain attacks, but only as a reaction. I've actually designed this for the Suriskin campaign, where one of the enemies that the players go against, named Knight Curran, has the ability to essentially lessen physical damage dealt to him. He essentially has, it's a reactionary ability called Tank, where he essentially bulks up and he gains a small amount of temporary HP to lessen one incoming physical or essentially melee or ranged attack that is dealt against him. But it only works against non-magical attacks. Magical attacks, still hurt him. So essentially, he tanks through the damage by essentially, as a reactionary ability, gaining extra hit points, and then, it eats through those before getting to his actual hit points. And I used this in the one encounter that the players had fought against him, and they were like kind of wondering, I was like, why is he able to take these hits so much better than, all the other villains we've been against? And that's the reason why, is because he was a step above. Giving your villains a gimmick puts them on an equal or a greater playing field than your players, because your players' characters, each one of their classes has a gimmick. Every class has a gimmick. The rogue has sneak attack. The warlock has Eldritch Blast, so on and so forth. They each have something that they are known for and that they do because that's how they get their most damage. Or that's how they help the group the most. So, the villain should have the same. And you should never have one villain versus 5 or 6 players. Not unless he's so powerful that they are going to need all 5 or 6 of them in order to take him down. Which, there are cases where that's, reasonable, such as against Vecna. That's an extremely powerful lich. You need the whole party to take him down. But at lower levels, you want to have it where the villain has henchmen, has essentially people under him who are there to impede the players and assist him in combat. In, I guess I would say in MMO terms, it would be kind of like having trash mobs or ads that are there to try and essentially attack the party while they're focusing on the big bad guy, and then the tank has to get all their attention, keep aggro. Man, it's been a long time since I played World of Warcraft, but I still kind of remember all the nuances of tanking, and I kind of hate myself for that. But yeah, so I feel like when it comes to doing your best with keeping your villain alive, you need to make sure that they are prepared for dealing with the players. Don't have a counter to everything that the players throw at him. Have a counter to most of the things, or at least half the things that the players have. If the players really like using a certain spell, perhaps the villain will think of a way of using his henchmen to make the players burn that spell before they even get to him. As we know, in some cases, you can only cast this spell like once a day, or, you only have that one slot. So you have to be very careful when you choose to pick it, or choose to cast it. And then you put the players on a timetable to where it's like, look, you don't have time to rest. Because if you rest, you're going to miss your chance, and you're not going to, and you may even lose completely because you were not on time. So that way the players are like, oh crap, I had to burn my 5th level spell. I don't have it anymore, but I can't rest in order to gain it back because we have to keep going. So now the villain doesn't have to worry about that 5th level spell ruining his day because he sacrificed one of his henchmen in order to burn it out of the players. This is what I feel like a villain should be like. It should be intelligent and essentially smart enough in order to counter the players before they even get to him. Exhaust them out, use up their abilities and spells before they even get to him, and that way when they get to him, he will have a better chance of defeating them. and the players themselves will have a much more challenging chance, because you don't want the villain to just flat out win. You want it to be essentially a difficult and hard fight. So yeah, at least that's my thinking and ideas when it comes to, helping your villain last longer. Is, give them a gimmick, make sure that they're intelligent enough to weaken the players before the players even get to them. And yeah, I mean, as far as, giving your villain a gimmick, you can just, like I said, give them a damage resistance ability or a magical item that helps lessen the damage that they take. So that way they can last longer if you want to be legit and purely by the book wise. As far as, fudging the rules a little bit, have something in the room that they encounter him in, essentially countering their spells and their abilities to make it harder to hit him. Maybe if, maybe say that the entire time he's been wearing some sort of amulet on him, and he's been, fighting the players, and then, the players are winning, they're going to beat him, and it's like turn 3. So he like rips the amulet off, and all of a sudden his power spikes, and his wounds start closing and knitting shut, because it turns out the amulet was essentially sealing his powers away, because he didn't want to use all of his power in fear of destroying the town or the village or kingdom that he was trying to take over. But now he has to use all of his power, and now the players are in for essentially a second phase of combat, where they're having to deal with a more powerful villain that they were dealing with originally. This is all essentially how I feel everything should go when it comes to essentially being a dungeon master and planning out your villain. Because, there's nothing more annoying than having overpowered players, or they're having a combo that they use that just destroys whatever you throw against them. One of the things in this Risking campaign is that one of my players, Mute2, uses essentially a Radiant Sunbolt as a monk, or as he calls it, a Hadouken. And he uses that to fight. Really ruins their day. Because it's like, oh, hey, vampire spawn, they regenerate health every turn, unless they're hit with radiant damage. In that case, it kind of ruins their day. And then combined with Regnus, who has radiant damage with his Hex ability and his Eldritch Blast and all that, it does more radiant damage. So they really have a very good combination there if they use their characters right, in order to deal with almost any vampire that I could throw against them, or any undead really that I could throw against them, purely through those two alone. Never mind the fact that the others have abilities of their own that could also deal some serious damage to any undead creature. Sorry, I've had like a long day. I've been having to just talk all day. So doing this broadcast and such, and trying to form my words after essentially running part of a festival where I live has taken a lot out of me. But yes, so when it comes to your villain, and if you decided to go with kind of like a mindless villain who doesn't really have an intelligence, they're more of a state of being, that, or a force of nature that kind of like pushes through, like some sort of semi-sentient mound of evil that just kind of like washes over the land, and the players have to cut through it in order to find the source, in order to snuff it out. Perhaps have more difficult obstacles in the way for them to be cutting through this wave of evil in order to get to the center. Perhaps there are more obstacles as far as, puzzles and so on. And when the closer they get to the center or the source, they are now in initiative order, because they are trying to essentially race against the clock as they feel this darkness creeping inside of them. Now they are essentially in danger of becoming the hands of this darkness versus the hands of light that are trying to defeat the darkness. I kind of like that, actually, now that I say that. Essentially, the players have to find a way of destroying this evil object, or else all those around it will become servants to it, including themselves. I like that idea a lot. I'm probably going to use that at some point in the future. Anyways, once again, my name is Ian, the part-time Dungeon Master. I thank you greatly for watching this small amount on having an overpowered players and how to keep your villain from dying 3 turns in. So I truly greatly appreciate you for watching and listening and all that fun jazz. So we're going to end that part there. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.